I don't serve people like you. Clarice Hampton adjusted her glasses, blinked slowly, and smiled. Then you've just refused service. To the woman who owns this bank. Monday, 9:17 m, Charlotte, North Carolina. The mild April breeze slipped through the glass revolving door of Hampton Private Trust, a polished private banking branch nestled in the city's financial district. Everything gleamed, as if someone wiped down the handrails every 30 minutes. Clarice Hampton stepped in with a gray canvas tote slung lightly over one shoulder. Floor-length linen skirt, cream cardigan, no makeup, hair neatly tied back. Only her bronze-rimmed glasses and simple flats gave a hint at her age 52, and seasoned enough not to speak loudly to be heard. Behind the counter, a young teller named Mason quickly tucked his phone into the drawer and gave a trained smile. "Good morning. How may I assist you?" Clarice set her bag down and spoke softly. "I'd like to withdraw $35,000 from a Hampton Executive Series account." Mason hesitated. The name sounded familiar. He pulled up the system, checked quickly, and frowned. "I'll need to verify some documentation. Ma'am, could I see your ID, account number, transaction code, and just the ID?" Clarice interrupted. "Calm and even. The rest will be authenticated through the internal system." Mason nodded, though he still looked uneasy. He scanned her ID, glanced at the screen. The data matched. The photo matched. But what gave him pause wasn't the confirmation. It was her appearance. Clarice looked different from the typical VIP clients. No Patek Philippe watch, no Chanel, no leather document folio. She came in with a worn canvas tote like she was on her way to the farmer's market. Not withdrawing a substantial sum of money, Mason pressed the manager call button, and fate walked out of the office in heels. Bethany Wexler, Black CEO, denied withdrawal service at her own bank. 7 minutes later, she fired the manager text. "Do not serve people pretending to be bankers. I don't serve people like you." Bethany's short blonde hair, gray blazer, heels tapping like a warning drumbeat. She eyed Clarice from head to toe, then turned to Mason. "What's the issue?" "Customer wants to withdraw cash $35,000. Executive Series account. Name's Clarice Hampton. The info checks out." But Bethany cut him off with a dismissive flick of her hand. "Clarice Hampton." She let out a dry laugh and turned to Clarice. "I've seen her photo. In Forbes. You really think you can pull this off?" Clarice looked up from her notebook and replied gently. "I'm not trying to pull anything. I'm simply here to make a withdrawal." Bethany crossed her arms. "Look, miss or ma'am, or whoever you are, this is a high-security financial institution. We don't serve unidentified individuals, and we certainly—" she narrowed her eyes, "don't serve people impersonating the owner of the bank." Mason blinked. Clarice didn't react. No surprise, no outrage. She simply observed. Bethany took a step closer, speaking in a low but sharp tone. "This is your last chance. Leave now, or I'll call security." Clarice tapped her finger on her watch and checked the time. 9:20. She pulled out her phone, opened an app, scanned her fingerprint. The screen lit up with the words, "Admin Access Hampton Private Trust." Bethany laughed out loud. "You actually think I'll believe a screen?" Clarice looked at her calm, unbothered. "You have 7 minutes. After that, I can't guarantee you'll still be standing here." Bethany Wexler stood with her arms crossed, right in the center of the bank's grand lobby, as if she were the lead actress on a stage where all eyes belonged to her, or at least, in her mind, they did. 7 minutes, Bethany repeated, smirking. "Is that supposed to scare me?" Clarice didn't answer. She simply slipped her phone back into her bag, slowly pulled a tissue from a small leather pouch, wiped her lenses, and folded the cloth neatly like there was no rush at all. But in her eyes, There was something cold as steel, something Bethany had never learned how to recognize. Mason stood nearby, clearly uneasy. He glanced again at the ID verification screen. Everything matched: account number, personal data, the photo. It was all correct. He turned toward Bethany and whispered, "I think maybe she really is." "No." Bethany snapped. "Don't let the appearance fool you, Mason. People like this think dressing down is clever. It's just another trick to trigger sympathy." Clarice tilted her head slightly. "People like me." Bethany didn't back down. "Listen, I've been in finance for 15 years. I know the difference between a real client and someone smooth-talking their way through. You don't have the poise, the presence. You're not right for this." Clarice raised an eyebrow, voice steady. "And what exactly is right in your definition?" Bethany didn't answer. She scoffed and turned to Mason. "Call security." "You sure?" Mason hesitated. "Absolutely. We're not about to let someone impersonate an executive and try to withdraw tens of thousands with just an ID and a confident tone." Clarice stood up. She wasn't tall, but when she stepped toward the counter, the whole space seemed to quiet. She placed both hands on the cold granite surface and locked eyes with Bethany, not with anger, but with a calm that made the other woman feel suddenly hollow. "You don't think someone like me could run this bank?" she asked quietly. Bethany gave a sharp laugh, her voice tight. "I think the woman who runs a $3 billion banking system wouldn't show up in a $25 linen dress, carrying a faded canvas bag, and withdraw money like she's stopping by an ATM outside a corner store." Clarice didn't flinch. She simply turned to Mason. "Your name is Mason, right?" "Yes, ma'am." "And you verified that the account information I provided is accurate?" "Yes." "Mrs. Clarice, I'm sorry. It's just policy requires managerial verification for large cash withdrawals." Clarice nodded. "You did your job. No problem at all." Bethany cut in. "We don't need you evaluating my staff." "Oh, I'm not evaluating," Clarice replied evenly. "I'm acknowledging." Right then, the front doors of the bank swung open. A sleek, black Cadillac SUV pulled up to the entrance. No sirens, no rush. The back door opened, and a tall black man in a dark navy suit stepped out. The entire bank seemed to pause. A few staff at the teller station stood up straight when they recognized his familiar figure. Bethany looked through the glass, then shot a nervous glance at Clarice. Her voice quivered. Who is that?" Clarice didn't look back. She simply repeated, quietly, 7 minutes, and then lifted her gaze to the wall clock. The minute hand landed exactly on 9:27. Gabriel Monroe stepped through the glass doors, as if the room itself paused to make way for him. His navy suit was perfectly tailored, his tie a deep shade of charcoal on the left lapel of his blazer, a small pin subtle, but unmistakable to anyone who had ever worked in law enforcement or government. It was the emblem of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI. His eyes swept the room quickly. He spotted Clarice immediately still standing calmly at the counter. Everything about her was always like that, even her silence had discipline. He walked straight toward her, not in a rush, not to intimidate, just present. Bethany squinted at him. "Who are you?" Gabriel didn't answer right away. He nodded gently to Clarice, then turned to Bethany. His voice was low, clear, and without raising it. He made the entire room feel smaller. "You just refused to process a legal transaction for Clarice Hampton." Bethany stepped back half a pace, trying to cling to the last thread of control. She was impersonating someone. I had the right to question her. Gabriel's face remained expressionless. "You had the right to follow protocol. Instead, you insulted her, refused to verify through the internal system, and most importantly made racially biased remarks while acting in an official capacity." Bethany began. But Gabriel had already turned to Mason. You were the first point of contact. Mason stood straighter, visibly pale. Yes, sir. I was the first one to receive her request. You verified the ID. Yes, completely. It matched the executive series profile in full. Clarice still hadn't spoken. She just stood there like a quiet force that made truth and pretense sort themselves out. Gabriel took another step forward and pulled a white envelope from the inside pocket of his suit, sealed with a red stamp. Bethany Wexler. He read her name slowly, as if each syllable carried weight. This is an emergency suspension order signed by the chair of the board. Effective immediately. You are relieved of all operational responsibilities within the Hampton Private Trust System, pending a full investigation into discriminatory conduct in a financial setting. Bethany's eyes widened. What, she doesn't have that kind of authority at that moment. Clarice finally stepped closer, light as air, but close enough for Bethany to feel the pressure of every breath. I do have that authority, she said, not loudly. Not shouting, because I founded Hampton Capital. I'm the one who signed your employment contract. And I'm the one who holds the responsibility for protecting the reputation of every branch that bears my name. Bethany was speechless. Gabriel placed the envelope on the counter. You have the right to respond in writing within 48 hours. A board attorney will contact you. Clarice turned to Mason. Her voice wasn't cold anymore. It carried the quiet depth of someone who had once trusted the system. You can walk out of here as just another employee, or you can stay and help protect what's right. The choice is yours. Mason swallowed hard. I want to stay. Then learn to look past wallets and skin color, Clarice replied, then gently stepped back. In that moment, everyone else in the bank's security, tellers, even the customers waiting in line felt the shift. No one spoke, because true power doesn't have to raise its voice. Clarice Hampton didn't leave right away. She stood there, in the center of the bank that bore her name, quietly taking in the faces of people who, just minutes ago, saw her as a nuisance, yet now. None of them dared meet her gaze. Bethany Wexler still hadn't accepted what had just happened. She snatched the suspension envelope and tore it open, her eyes scanning the bold, unflinching text. Immediate suspension due to violation of conduct policy and discriminatory behavior while serving a client. Below it, the signature sharp, unmistakable, Clarice E. Hampton, chairwoman and founder, Hampton Capital Holdings. Bethany stumbled back a step. She looked around, hoping someone, anyone, would defend her. That someone would say this was all just a misunderstanding. But silence answered her, like everyone had just witnessed the final sentence in a trial for a power trip built on prejudice. She cried out, voice trembling, "You can't do this just because I didn't recognize you. I was following protocol." Clarice turned back, her eyes no longer angry, just tired. "You're not being suspended for not recognizing me, Bethany." She walked slowly toward the counter. "You're being suspended for how quickly you dismissed me. Because when you saw a black woman, dressed simply, asking to withdraw money, you assumed fraud. You didn't investigate, you refused." Bethany opened her mouth to argue, but Clarice wasn't waiting for her anymore. "Your mistake wasn't not knowing who I was. Your mistake was believing I couldn't be anyone at all." Silence. No chair shifting, no keys tapping. A middle-aged woman standing in line gently set her purse on the ground as if making a silent gesture of solidarity. An elderly white man removed his glasses and bowed his head. Clarice turned to Mason, her voice softer. "You have potential, but potential doesn't save anyone if it comes with silence." Mason flushed red. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Hampton. I should have done what was right." Clarice nodded. No praise, no comfort. Just one quiet sentence. "Then do what's right, from now on." Gabriel checked his watch. "We should go. Board meeting's at 10. Clarice turned, but as she passed Bethany, she paused just long enough to say only loud enough for the two of them to hear, "You thought you had the right to decide who deserved to stand behind this glass counter. But I'm the one who built it." And with that, she walked away. The glass doors closed behind them. The black SUV slowly disappeared around the corner. Inside the branch, the room felt like it had just survived a pressure drop, no wind. But everyone felt the chill. Bethany remained frozen, gripping the suspension letter, sweat dripping from her temple down into her collar. She used to think power was knowing who deserved service and who didn't, but now, she had learned a different truth. Real power doesn't raise its voice. It doesn't need to, because when it enters the room, everyone listens. 1 hour later, on the 36th floor of the Stonebridge Tower, inside the boardroom of Hampton Capital. The meeting started exactly on time as always, but there was nothing routine in the minds of those who had just read the urgent incident report from the Charlotte branch. Clarice Hampton sat at the head of the 8-meter-long ebony table. Beside her was Gabriel Silent, observing. She didn't need to justify anything, didn't need to tell a story. She only had to say one sentence. "I didn't fire her because of the system's flaws. I fired her because she was the system." At the far end of the table, a white board member in his 60s removed his glasses. "Mrs. Clarice, Bethany was just voted manager of the quarter," Clarice nodded. "And she's also been the subject of complaints, 2 from Asian clients, 1 from a Mexican client, and 3 from black customers in the past year. Not one of them was addressed." Silence spread like ink spilling across white paper. Not due to lack of evidence, Clarice continued, but because no one wanted to disturb the still surface of the pond. She gently placed her fountain pen on the table, like a period at the end of a sentence. "But I didn't build Hampton Capital to preserve still waters. I built it so people like me and, like millions of others, wouldn't have to ask to be treated with respect." No one spoke after that, because there was nothing left to argue. That afternoon, Clarice returned home a modest penthouse, understated for someone of her wealth, but the only place she ever called safe. Gabriel made tea. They didn't say much. She sat by the window, watching Charlotte light up, the roads below moving like rivers of memory that needed no explanation. "Do you remember," she said softly, 10 years ago, when I got denied a basic account at the first bank I ever invested in?" Gabriel nodded. "That man asked if you were the housekeeper who walked into the wrong building." Clarice closed her eyes, and today, someone else asked. "Are you withdrawing money for someone else?" He poured the tea. Same question. But today, they no longer get to be the ones asking. She smiled. Not a victorious smile, just the smile of someone who had lived through years of being unseen, unheard, and underestimated, and had outlasted them all. The next morning, a small headline appeared in the finance section of the Wall Street Chronicle. Hampton Capital suspends Charlotte branch manager over racial misconduct. Founder Clarice Hampton reiterates, "Excellence has no dress code, and dignity has no skin color." Beneath it, the article quoted another line, not from an official statement, but from a staff member who had been there. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. She just stood there, and the entire system bowed its head. Clarice Hampton didn't walk out of that bank in revenge. She walked out in presence, and left behind something far more powerful than any declaration, the silence of a woman who knows exactly who she is, and no longer needs to prove it to anyone.